As they continue their effort to win complete control of the city, Russian forces have reportedly taken further ground in Bakhmut, according to the country's defense ministry on Sunday. With the city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine being almost completely destroyed by artillery shelling and urban combat, the battle for Bakhmut has become one of the bloodiest of the 14-month conflict. Protests against Putin's minister's blood money are held in Paris by anti-Kremlin activists. On Sunday, anti-Kremlin demonstrators held a rally in Paris to call for the EU to impose sanctions on the socialite wife of the Russian deputy defense minister, whom they charge of evading the restrictions. Several dozen protesters gathered outside Svetlana Maniovica's rumored residence in Paris's 7th arrondissement, one of the priciest neighborhoods in the French capital, while chanting sanctions and waving placards. Russia is attacking the nation's cities, according to Ukraine. According to Ukrainian officials, Russian soldiers bombarded Ukrainian cities over the weekend with missiles, mortars, artillery fire, and airstrikes, destroying homes and vital infrastructure and killing at least one person. Paris, Kiev, Baltic states dismayed after China envoy questions Ukraine's sovereignty. France, Ukraine and the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania expressed dismay after China's ambassador in Paris questioned the sovereignty of former Soviet countries like Ukraine. Asked about his position on whether Crimea is part of Ukraine or not, Chinese Ambassador Liu She said in an interview aired on French television on Friday that historically it was part of Russia and had been offered to Ukraine by former Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. These ex-USSR countries don't have actual status in international law because there is no international agreement to materialize their sovereign status, She added. France responded on Sunday by stating its full solidarity with all the Allied countries affected, which it said had acquired their independence after decades of oppression. On Ukraine specifically, it was internationally recognized within borders including Crimea in 1991 by the entire international community, including China, a foreign ministry spokesperson said. According to a new report, Ukrainian armed forces have effectively constructed positions on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River, sparking suspicion on Sunday that the advancements could be a precursor to Kyiv's long-awaited spring counteroffensive. The Institute for the Study of War, a Washington-based think tank, stated late Saturday that geolocated video from military bloggers who were pro-Kremlin suggested that Ukrainian forces had established a foothold close to the town of Oleshki and had stable supply routes to their positions. Most analysts agree that if Ukraine launches a spring offensive, one of its main objectives would be to breach the land border between Russia and the Crimean Peninsula, which would require crossing the Dnieper River in the south of the country. The spokesperson for Ukraine's Operational Command South, Natalia Humeniuk, urged patience in response to allegations in the Ukrainian media that the installation of such positions meant the counteroffensive had started. Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, declared on Sunday that Moscow will not forgive Washington for refusing to provide Russian journalists U.S. visas so they could follow him to the UN. Lavrov, who will preside over multiple UN Security Council meetings in New York, said, "We won't forget, we won't forgive this." He said to reporters that America had chickened out. According to a Valerio Fabri article on Portal Plus, China's delicate balancing act of attempting to deepen trade ties with the EU while also supporting the Russia-Ukraine conflict is likely to become unstable in the months to come because what the communist country seeks to achieve in collaboration with Russia fundamentally conflicts with the EU's requirement for border security. Therefore, any diplomatic ploys China employs in connection with negotiations with Ukraine should not be taken seriously because they will only serve to stymie EU efforts to reduce China's influence over the Ukraine issue. Restrictions on high-tech exports to and from China are likely to be another factor that will put the cybersecurity capabilities of Europe to the test as China tries to hack its way into bolstering its own capabilities. Chinese rare earth metals make about 90% of the rare earth metals utilized in the EU today. As they continue their effort to win complete control of the city, Russian forces have reportedly taken further ground in Bakhmut, according to the country's defense ministry on Sunday. With the city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine being almost completely destroyed by artillery shelling and urban combat, the battle for Bakhmut has become one of the bloodiest of the 14-month conflict. According to Russia, seizing Bakhmut will enable it to launch additional offensives into eastern Ukraine. If they are successful, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, two nearby towns, would certainly see even more intense urban combat between Moscow's soldiers. On Sunday, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that troops had taken control of two more blocks in the western districts of Bakhmut and that airborne forces were supplying reinforcements to the north and south. Dmitry Medvedev, a former Russian president, stated on Sunday that if the G7 decided to impose export restrictions to Russia, Moscow would respond by canceling the Black Sea Grain Agreement, which permits crucial grain exports from Ukraine. According to last week's report by the Japanese Kyodo News Agency, which cited sources within the Japanese government, the Group of Seven, G7, nations are proposing a nearly complete ban on exports to Russia.